All right, for this presentation, we're going to basically go through a lot of maintenance intervals, and information that you're going to be able to find in your operator's manual largely is what we're going to be covering, but it's just a refresher. And both of these machines, their maintenance schedules and intervals are relatively identical. Then we'll look at several of the service bulletins, and we're going to be primarily focusing on these two models. So if you're running other models, there's always other information that may be available that we can find. And why should maintenance be important to every machine owner? Prevent downtime. I love it. What else? You hit them all. Yes. All right. So all these maintenance schedules, they're in your operator's manual. So this is not necessarily new information. We just want to put it out there. Daily maintenance. Visual inspection. Look for puddles on the floor, like if your machine's setting overnight. You know, be aware if there's oil leaks or anything. Check your engine oil, coolant levels. This is simple stuff. And yet, when I was running my machines, it was one of the easiest things to just jump in it, go with it. We're going to think about checking oil tomorrow. Coolant levels, kind of the same. General lubrication. Some of these intervals would be, weekly. It's fine, but the grease will get dry. It's hard to grease them. Then it's easy to just let it go. And that's probably one of the most devastating things to a hinge point. Don't have pictures, but should have maybe showed you some results of not greasing. On these guys, anything on the boom, just grease it regularly. Make sure everything takes grease. Weekly maintenance. Check hydraulic fluid levels, clean radiator cores. These guys here and the 625s, you got reversing fans, and that helps a lot. But when you're getting into a little wetter conditions and you're pushing chicken litter, that's probably when we see some of the most plugging happen. These units are not the easiest to clean the cores. What I use is a right angle water hose and an air hose. Try to get in there a little bit easier, but if you get them packed up, pretty much the only way to deal with that is pull some of these shields out, and then to where you can get a straight shot with air and so on. If they're not clean, you'll get overheating issues. Hydraulics will overheat, transmissions overheat. Keep the machine clean if possible. That's not something that is always possible. You may not have air or water close. Just do your best to keep it relatively clean. Anytime we have hay and straw or chicken litter piled up in these guys, it's going to eat through the rust or eat through the paint, rust. 500-hour maintenance. Engine oil and filter, hydrostatic transmission filter. That is the hydrostat transmission, especially on this one, and I don't think I've ever changed any of the 625s, but they are a little bit of a pain. They're tight, yeah. Hydraulic filter on your 625, like they might have a screen on the, but your return filter on the 625 is under the cab. Yeah, you gotta crawl down underneath, be directly under the cab. On these units, it's under the cab but behind the door, so it's a little bit easier to access the return filters on these guys. They do recommend to replace the hydraulic oil tank cap, which would be this right here. That's just it's a cap with a vent in it. 1,000-hour service. Everything that we talked about on the 500 plus, their recommendation, replace the coolant. Fuel filters are 1,000 hour, so it'd be basically every 2 years. Fuel tank breather, def pump filter, primary air filter, and then the reduction gearbox oil, as well as the differentials. So gearbox oil, 80W90. Thank you, sir. This is what you're going to see, but we've got a Manitou part number on it. All right, we've talked about this one. On these units, we've got a what do they call it? Transfer box, and it shifts mechanically, and then it uses hydraulic to shift the rail. The rail protrudes out of the front of the transmission, or out of the front of that transfer box, and if it's not shifted often, or if it stays in the one position for a long time, they end up getting rusty, and then they'll get stuck. Doesn't really pertain to the 625s, but I've had to fix up a couple of them this year. Steering pressure sensor leaking was a common problem on these units, and they've got an upgraded part now. So this kind of goes back to I mentioned about keeping the machine clean. We've seen guys who've loading chicken litter all day, and the manure falls out of the bucket and ends up in this boom channel. Keeps building up. That's a pain for the service guy when he's got to go out there and fix it, especially if the unit's been out in the rain with that thing full of chicken manure. So then you got to kind of dig out and get stinky and everything else. So just a reminder to keep it clean. It'll save you money. You've got the accumulator there in the back under the boom. If that gets piled up, they end up ripping that off, and then just additional expense. VT230, pretty basic skid loader maintenance. Every so often, take your belly pans out and keep her clean under there. Some guys don't know that the belly pans can come off, and they won't clean that out. So you might end up with 2 inches of muck in the bottom that kind of dries out, but it'll take out hydraulic lines, valve coils, get rusty, and makes for a booger to repair that. Simple task, decrease your downtime. Which is more expensive, uptime or downtime? Which is more expensive? Right. Yeah. That's what uptimes are all about, is staying ahead of problems. Okay, this was the air conditioning issue that I was talking about. Compressor clutch cycles on and off is normal operation. If the clutch does not cycle, the evaporator will freeze up. And then on these units, we've had temperature switch failures. And there's kits, sensor kits that we can install to make that repair fairly easy without having to replace the whole cooling unit. Something like an expansion valve on this unit cannot be bought separately. It's like part of the evaporator. So, and the evaporator can't be bought separately. You have to buy the whole heater unit that goes into the dash. But with the temperature switch issue, we can't address that separately. So I've seen, it's one of those issues when you have evaporator freezing up, it's very easily to think that, well, we've got an expansion valve problem, or something down that line, and well, you can't buy the expansion valve by itself. So then you end up replacing the whole heater box, and that fixes it, but you've also replaced the temperature switch. At the same, when you put the heater box in, you're putting a temperature, and that might have been the original problem. So evaporator hose clogging, just another maintenance thing. Keep it clean and open, and keep your filters in good shape. That'll allow it to drain like it needs to. All right, what do I do if the machine loses engine power and I need to tow it? Ryan, you've had that question, I believe, and I think that's kind of what sparked this. 10533. Yes, that's a little, well, it's going to be a similar case, because on these guys, that's hydrostat, this is hydrostat. They just, theory of operation or power transfer is set up a little bit different. But if you were to tow that unit, it would try to turn your hydrostat pumps. If you towed this unit, it would also turn your hydrostat pumps. There is a way to disengage that. This is a page that's taken out of the operator's manual for this unit. So there's a procedure where you have to unlock or open some valves on the hydrostat pump and that allows the fluid to move without damaging anything. On these units, we've had fuel filter brackets that were breaking on the Deutz engines. That's been updated now to a new style bracket that has been more reliable. Transmission freewheeling. I haven't particularly run into this problem, but to correct it, it's a software version problem. This is a sensor adjustment on the hydrostat motor on these units to improve our shifting. On the V230s, they've had an issue of batteries discharging even if the battery switch was in off position. And that was corrected by relocating the ground wire from the battery post to the chassis ground. And if you walk around the back of this machine, we can see it. Telematics. Easy Manager, if you got a new machine, you'll have 2 years of telematics. But I like it because it gives me the option to see any fault codes that you have before I even get, before I get on site. Sometimes it's things we can work through without me even being there. Comes with a subscription, 2 years easy link activation. Then after this period, it needs to be renewed at the customer's expense. If you have a new unit, Telematics can drain the batteries, because every 15 minutes they ping. That's the setting that they're on when they come from factory. We do have the option to change that. Anytime you're running the machine, they're pinging every 15 minutes. All right, that's the end of my presentation. If you got any questions, thank you for your input.